So number 4, another thing that you want to do during this period is to take a look at your investment strategy and make sure that it is still appropriate for you and the amount of risk that you want to take in your life. How many of you are on Twitter? I imagine quite a few are probably on Twitter. I am on Twitter. I've got about 65,000 followers on Twitter. And what that means is that when I post something that really resonates, I get a couple hundred likes and maybe a couple dozen comments. Well, a while back, before the crisis, I posted something that got thousands of both. It went so viral that the Washington Post actually wrote about it, and it wasn't a cat picture and it wasn't anything about the president. It was actually retirement advice. So this was my original tweet. By the time you're 30, you want to aim to have 1 times your annual income set aside for retirement. At 43 times, at 56 times, at 68 times, and by the time you retire, 10 times. And these guidelines, by the way, were developed by Fidelity Investments, but there's nothing unusual about them. Many financial institutions have ones that are very, very similar. But Twitter went nuts, and not in a good way. These were the kinds of tweets that I received in response. David wrote, there we go. David wrote, good advice. On a related note, does anyone know any handy recipes for leftover unicorn? And Michelle wanted to know how much room this left for the essentials in her budget, like avocado toast. And look, I got it. I understood, because if you haven't started stashing money away yet for your future, the numbers that I laid out do look large. They may look unattainable. But if you can get yourself to the point where you are saving 15% a year, and that can include any matching dollars that you receive from your employer, you'll see that those numbers are absolutely within reach. And the bottom line is, most of us will need that much. The point of that retirement stash is to cover about 45% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. The rest will come from Social Security to get you to a replacement rate of income that you should be able to comfortably live on. Now, I should point out, if any of you are fortunate enough to have a traditional pension, you can save less by the amount that will cover. But the point of looking at numbers like this is that it can inspire us to up our game. That's one big reason that we need to continually assess. So what do we do now in light of this crisis? Well, first, take a look at your 401k or your other retirement contributions. If you're in a cash crunch, it is far better to dial back on your contributions into your 401k than it is to pull money out either by withdrawing or by borrowing. And this is despite the provisions in the CARES Act that allow for penalty-free withdrawals and a doubling of the amount that you're able to borrow. And then when this crisis is all over, and someday it will be over, focus on just getting that savings rate back up. Historically, we know that there are 3 things that determine how successful most investors are. The first, and by far the most important, is that savings rate. Socking away that 15%, again, including those matching dollars, will generally be enough to know that you can retire at 65 and with Social Security, replace about 80 to 85% of your income. Second, and also hugely important, is your asset allocation. That's the mix of investments, the stocks, the bonds, the cash that you choose to balance risk and reward. And years of research shows that this is responsible for about 90% of the return on your money. This is something that you want to look at right now. If the recent movements in the market mean that you are holding too much in stock for the amount of risk that you want to be taking, that's something that you want to adjust. And if the recent movements in the market mean that you're holding too little in stock based on the amount of risk that you want to take, then you want to adjust that as well. The third factor on the list is the individual security selection, the individual stocks and bonds that you pick to fill out those positions. This is far, far less important. And that's because if you look back historically, the S&P 500 has gone up 10% on average since its inception. The Dow has gone up just a little bit less than that since its inception. If you are fine with results like that, and for the record, I am fine with results like that, then all you have to do to be a successful investor is to put your money into low-cost, highly diversified index funds or exchange-traded funds that mimic the market in a proportion that makes sense for your age and your risk tolerance, and then you can call it a day. The sort of volatility that we're seeing in the markets right now, though, can mess with this picture.